making laws, executing public affairs, and adjudicating on crimes of individuals. He stipulated that there should be three corresponding organs for the three separate functions: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Finally, he stated that these three functions should be held by three separate branches in order to uphold the what is three functions: executing public affairs, executing crimes, or individual cases. Making law, executing public affairs, and adjudicating on crimes or individual cases. He stipulated that three should be three corresponding organs of the government: legislature, executive, and judiciary. Finally, stated that these three functions should be held three separate branches in order to uphold the protect liberty. Relevance of Montesque doctrine to separation of power. That there should be government of law rather than will and whims. Another feature is that three should be independent judiciary. It should be free from the other organs. Judiciary is the scale through which one can measure the actual development of the state. If the judiciary is not independent, then it is the first step towards a tyrannical form of government. Power is concentrated in a single hand. Then there is a 10% chances of misuse of power. Practical implementation of a doctrine. The government is a single and desirable because without having mutual coordination amongst the government cannot carry out its functions effectively and efficiently. Function of law making cannot be exclusive domain of the legislature. Need of our times have now made it essential to provide for lawmaking by the executive under the lawmaking by the executive under the system of delegate legislation. In the same way, judges while giving judgment lay down certain judicial legislation, judicial overreach. Separation of powers is historical as it has never been operational in England. Formulating and advocating this theory, Montesque advocated that it was at work in England under the British Parliament system of government. There is close relationship between the British Parliament and the cabinet, even no separation of judiciary from legislature. The British House of Lords acts as highest court of appeals. It is criticized that their theory of separation of powers wrongly assumes the equality of all three organs of the government. The legislature of the state is always regarded as the prime organ of government. The work of the government begins by lawmaking. Montesquieu. Actual practice, the executive acts the most powerful organ of the government. The judiciary is considered to be the weakest organs, judiciary, held in high esteem by the people. But it appears that preposition has no application in India because with the passage of time, Indian judiciary has proved to be the strongest organ but not dominating. Separation of power has often created a situation in which each organ cannot get engaged in conflict, deadlocks with the other two organs. Doctrine of separation of powers is wrong because the theory actually advocates separation of functions, not the powers. Advocate is separation functions. Power of the government is one whole. It can be separated into three separate parts. It is at the back of the function of all three organs of the government. The theory of separation of power is really theory of separation of functions. Actually, practical working of the separation of power. The separation of power is the key to the working of the parliamentary government. Our democratic system exists with an absolute separation of the powers. The legislative power should be in the hand of the legislature, but the executive power and judiciary power, some checking power over it, with the view to prevent any misuse of arbitrary use of legislation powers by the legislatures. The same way, the executive power must be vested with the executive, but legislature and judiciary should be given some checking power over it. Same should be the case of judiciary, and its power should be in some respect checked by the legislature and the executive. All powers. Well, separation powers keys to working parliament government. No democratic system exists with an absolute separation of power or absolute lack of separation of power. Actually,